So the Giants fell to the Cowboys in Big D 37-34 as Greg Zuerlein came through with a game-winning 34-yard field goal as time expired. So the Giants are 0-5. This is the first time they've started 0-5 since the 2017 season. We're going to break down the game. We'll get to your phone calls. And Jeff, as we were discussing at great length on the Giants Radio Network postgame show last night, let's start with what to me has been a continuous trend this season, and it's the penalties, which are not high in volume, though yesterday they did have a season-high 8 penalties, but the timing of these penalties. You know, we see teams, you commit penalties in the middle of a drive, 5-yard penalty, a hold, a false start. You have an opportunity to regroup, you overcome them. For some reason, when the Giants commit penalties, it happens in the red zone. It happens when they're running a fake field goal. And you can't go up against the Cowboys offense that was coming in averaging over 30 points a game, regardless of their defensive issues, and say we're going to take 2 touchdowns off the board because of mishaps and miscommunications.
No, we've always talked about the fact, Lance, that this team going against the Cowboys is going to have to score some points. I didn't think it was going to happen. Especially the way that it did, but you can't just, and we even talked in our pregame show yesterday about giving the opposing team opportunities, right? You can't,
sure.
And that's always been, and in this sense, it's always been turnovers, giving them good field position, and then all of a sudden now these penalties are starting to creep up, and you take 2 touchdowns off the board against a team that has been scoring, 30-plus points a game. You're not that good of a football team to overcome those types of things. Now, they did some good things in the game yesterday, but they're going to have to shore up those penalties no matter where they come. And, if you listen to Darius Slayton, the one touchdown that was taken off the board, which would have been, a real pass play into the end zone finally, it was a rub route, and it shouldn't happen. They run those enough times in practice and in games that they should not be penalized for it because it doesn't have to happen. Now, it was an incidental. He said it incidentally happened, but it can't happen. You can't run that route and have a penalty on that because look what happened. They took it off the board. It cost them the game.
That was the Damian Ratley offensive pass interference call that, to your point, came on the Slayton touchdown. Then there was the illegal shift against Cam Fleming on the fake field goal. So they got the Cowboys off guard. Evan Engram wide open, Jeff. Okay, you did what you needed to, but the problem is one player wasn't set. Little bit of a rush, and then, you can't tap back into that, Jeff. Once you show your cards, that's not one of those plays where you can say, all right, don't worry, we'll get back to it in the fourth quarter, and we'll see if we can pull a fast one. You wasted what was a really good setup play to get the Cowboys off guard and try to capitalize once again, and there's 14 points right there between both of those plays.
Yeah, and we haven't heard from Cam Fleming. We haven't heard from Riley Dixon what happened there. I know being in that position before as a holder, your number one thing as a holder is to make sure that everybody's set before you snap the ball, whether it's a kick or anything. The other one is to make sure that you have time on the clock, that you get the ball snapped in time, right? So I know that Riley, they practiced that play all week. They had to. I wasn't there, but I know that they did. And it worked flawlessly. But you know what? In a game, Cam Fleming's got to get his butt ready and sit down. He's got to get ready to execute that play. And, did Riley snap it a little bit too early because he wasn't ready? Maybe. But I will tell you this. There's a situation whenever there's fakes, whether it's field goals or punts, you're catching the opponent in a situation where you've studied them and you feel like you can pull one over on them. Well, the Giants pulled one over on the Cowboys. And Evan Engram was sitting out there wide open. And Riley Dixon was sitting there going, oh, my God, this is perfect, exactly the way we wanted it. And he most likely, in my opinion, has probably snapped the ball a little bit too early. And I'm not going to blame him because both of them are at fault. And it worked, but it didn't work because it wasn't executed properly. That's like me saying, you run for a touchdown for 100 yards, but, there was a holding call. Well, it didn't work. You ran for 100, but it didn't work. Doesn't count.
All that matters is what the box score reflects. The box score doesn't reflect those 2 touchdowns. They were both off the board. I mean, we could sit here, we could put the officiating under the microscope, which is clearly something that NFL fans love to do every single game. But as I say all the time, Jeff, and I hope you can relate to this having played in the league for over 2 decades, good teams overcome those issues.
They do.
And they don't point to the officials as saying that's why we lost the game.
They
and
never
let's
should.
expand this a little bit more, Jeff. While those two were the killers because they took 2 touchdowns off the board, let's not excuse the fact that Adrian Colbert gets 2 unnecessary roughness penalties, so you tack on 15 yards. Both of them came on C.D. Lamb receptions over the middle. One was for 18, the other one was for 24. So, just think about the field position you're giving to an electric Cowboys offense. And then the other one of note is Marcus Golden called for a face mask penalty on that Cowboys final drive where, they have to go about 80-some-odd yards, and you have Zeke stopped. The pile is hovering around Zeke, and Golden grabs him by the face mask, so there's another 15-yard gift. All of those penalties, I would argue, may have not reflected touchdowns, but certainly helped the Cowboys move the chains and get in position to put more points on the board.
Yep, and, penalties cost you football games, just like turnovers, because, really when you extend plays for teams by bad penalties, so you get a 3rd and 4 stop and you have a defensive holding penalty, it's a 5-yard for automatic first down. So these penalties, they extend plays, they extend series. And, we talked all week about what you don't want to do for the Cowboys is give them the opportunity to have those 10 possessions that they have every week. And, the Giants did somewhat of a good job with that. I think they only had 8 yesterday. So, but when you have penalties, Lance, you extend those plays, you extend those drives, and ultimately, if it's a good team, they will take advantage of you.
And that's exactly what happened with the Cowboys. The other thing was Dallas scored on a defensive touchdown. Daniel Jones once again turning the ball over. Anthony Brown on the scoop and score after DeMarcus Lawrence was able to sack Daniel Jones, forced the strip sack. So here we go again. That is now 5 straight games this season where they've had at least 1 turnover. They now have 9 total on the season. And more often than not, the opposition has been at least able to put some points on the board. I think it's amazing to me, Jeff, when you talk about, here we have a rare occurrence. The Giants actually won the turnover battle. They had 2 takeaways. They turned it over once. And one of the turnovers, or the takeaways, I should say, was a defensive touchdown. Kyler Fackrell had a pick 6.
Big play.
You normally say to yourself, right, the percentages are in your favor when you win the turnover battle, and then on top of winning the turnover battle, you actually take one of those takeaways and score a touchdown. But the Cowboys' defensive touchdown, to me, cancels out what Kyler Fackrell did. So now you're back to even. And then once again, the 8 penalties for over 80 yards also, I would argue, cancels out the other takeaway because you basically even the playing field with Dallas by rewarding them on the offensive end.
Yeah, if you want to look at it that way, it's just, the penalties hurt you. The turnovers continue to hurt you. Especially when you're giving them touchdowns out of it. The other one that continues to plague this team, that we don't talk much about it, but it comes up seemingly in at least the games that we think that the Giants had a chance to win, and those are the drives in the second quarter, right before the half, or at the end of the game that they are giving up. And you go back and look at the games, the 2 that they were giving up at the first halves. I think it was the Chicago game. You
and
can
the
help
Pittsburgh
me out with
game,
this, Lance.
too.
And the Pittsburgh game. And then yesterday, at the end of the game. Those other ones came at the before the half. Well, this one came at the end of the game. But the reality of it is the Giants, in all 3 of those situations, all they do is got to make some stops. And then you also have the situations where you have an opportunity as a team to go down and win a football game. As young as they are and as much as inexperienced that we talk about, this Giants team has had a chance to win some games by putting together some drives, but the one turned into a turnover at the end of the game to cost them the game. Yesterday, the offense got 1 first down and 15 total yards with 1 minute and 50 seconds left in the game when all they needed to do was get into field goal range because we know that Graham Gano can hit 50-plus field goals. He hit 3 of them yesterday. And by the way, we don't talk enough about him. That might be the best free agent signing on the history of free agent signings for the Giants. He is dynamite and coming off an injury, by the way. So my point is that Giants are making strides, but they got to clean up the penalties, the turnovers, and some of the things that are hurting them on these last drives of the half and the last drives of the game.
Well said. This team just unfortunately is not good enough to overcome all of those obstacles. I want to expand on your point about the late drives and the drives overall because coming off of the Rams game, Jeff, we had a lot of conversations about that. It was by far the most impressive defensive performance by that unit.
To hold
right?
that team to, absolutely.
Correct.
17
To hold
points.
the Rams.
Or 19, right? Was it 19?
17 points.
17, yeah.
And Cooper Kupp was the only explosive play. There were no plays over 20 yards other than the 55-yard touchdown. But I remember coming off that game and saying, okay, hey, really good performance. But was that a flash, Jeff? Or was that something that they could duplicate against other powerful offenses? Well, Dallas put together, Jeff, 3 drives in this game over 75 yards, or at least 75 yards, and they all resulted in big-time scores. You had a Zeke 1-yard rushing touchdown that capped a 14-play, 75-yard drive. By the way, they ran the ball 10 times on that drive, and it ate up 7 minutes. Then they had a 6-play, 75-yard drive. This one only took them 35 seconds. This was the one that you were pointing to that came late in the first half. Cedric Wilson throws the touchdown pass to Dak, okay? That's another touchdown. And then second half, 10 plays, 79 yards, 4:22 off the clock. Zeke, 12-yard rushing touchdown, 31-23. So, that was something that we didn't see against the Rams. The Rams had trouble moving the ball consistently and finishing drives. Dallas did not. And then, to your point, the last drive of the game, Michael Gallup, and we brought this up in the pregame show, Jeff, he was averaging over 21 yards per catch.
That's right.
So you knew, okay, this is their big playmaker down the field. This is the guy that they look to air it out to because he has the ability to go up, help his quarterback. And Andy Dalton coming in as the backup quarterback after Dak goes down, the game plan didn't change because Dalton is a veteran quarterback. He's had his fair share of reps in practice with the team. He's been in a variety of offenses. He knew to look to Gallup. The 19-yard pass, the 38-yard pass, that is, once again, knowing time, territory, down and distance, who to hone in on. And the Giants, more often than not, were not able to get off the field and make the necessary stop.
And make the necessary big play. I mean, all you got to do is break up one of those. You don't know what's going to happen after that, But, again, we talk about this big plays in big games. And, when you go and if you go from the first game to the 5th game, you have a ledger, Lance. You put on the left side the opposing team. You put on the right side the Giants. Add up the big plays on the left. Add up the big plays on the right. It's going to give you a pretty good idea of what your record is. And this is what haunts this team, along with the things that we just talked about, is that this team has got to be able to produce and have somebody on both sides of the football that intimidates the opponent to where they have to pay attention to someone like that, which then will free up possibly another player on your team to make a big play. And the Giants are not there yet. They're just not there. I see Darius Slayton as being one of those guys that can make big plays down the field with a vertical passing game if the Giants can get some protection. Defensively, you've got 2 of your starters that, Kyler Fackrell, I didn't know if he was going to play today, but, you got the X-Men. Zimmer, he goes on IR, and then you got Lorenzo Carter out of the lineup like the first quarter of the game. And so now you're kind of stuck there where you have 2 of your young guns that you're trying to develop into being those big-time players. And I think that's what the Giants thought that those guys can be or think they can be, but you're without them. So, and then you look on the other side of the football with the Cowboys and that defensive line. Okay, they got some major players on that other side of the football. And they also have a running back that can run, and they had a quarterback that, until he got hurt, that could throw the ball. And those 3 wide receivers. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that on paper, the Dallas Cowboys are a much better football team. The Giants did hang with them without throwing a touchdown yesterday, but there's things they got to clean up.